Southern and central Wales will see a spell of more persistent rain and stronger winds, giving a rather dull and damp morning there. The cloud and rain will also spread across parts of the Midlands. However, here the rain will be patchier, with eastern areas staying largely dry throughout the morning. It'll be breezy, especially in the west. Northern East Anglia may see the odd stray shower first thing. Otherwise, it'll be a dry and sunny morning. It will become very warm, despite the brisk breeze. The dry and sunny weather will also encompass much of southern England, although the southwest will be rather cloudy with some patchy rain. Breezy for many, with stronger winds across Devon and Cornwall. Little then changes as we move towards lunch across the UK, with temperatures in the southeast and East Anglia approaching 30 Celsius. And that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in my big opinion, the NHS now costs every household in the country £10,000 a year. The health service is on life support. People are not being treated, and radical change is the only answer. In the big question, does being woke or politically correct just mean you're a nice person? Are woke people just more caring human beings? We'll hear from all sides on that one, including free speech champion Toby Young. My Mark Meets guest is the highly talented X Factor singer who was discovered by none other than Sir Elton John. Pop sensation Talia Storm tells her story after 10. Plus, it's claimed that Camilla joked about Harry and Meghan's child potentially having a ginger afro. A harmless joke or deeply offensive? We'll get reaction from the Queen of US Royal reporting live from Hollywood in California, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, we got the papers hot off the press at 10:30. Lots to get through. First, the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. France's foreign minister says facilities need to be improved at the port of Dover to help ease travel delays. It comes after drivers faced waits of up to 11 hours. Catherine Colonna makes the claim after speaking to Foreign Secretary Liz Truss However, she's blaming a lack of French border officials. It's the second day of delays as British tourists try to set off on their summer holidays. The World Health Organization says monkeypox is now a global health emergency. The organization warns the global risk to people's health is moderate. However, in Europe, it's high. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus says the outbreak can be contained.
Although I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern, for the moment, this is an outbreak that's concentrated among men who have sex with men, especially those with multiple sexual partners. That means that this is an outbreak that can be stopped with the right strategies in the right groups.
The latest polling suggests voters believe Rishi Sunak would make a better Prime Minister than Liz Truss. An opinion survey of 2,000 adults found that 43% backed the former Chancellor compared to 36% for the Foreign Secretary. Meanwhile, 49% of voters believe Boris Johnson should leave Downing Street immediately. Rishi Sunak says he'll put the UK on a crisis footing to tackle issues such as inflation if he becomes Prime Minister. Speaking in Grantham, the former Chancellor hit back at tax cuts announced by his rival Liz Truss, warning they could lead to further inflation. He also promised to tackle the NHS backlog, pledging to eliminate one-year waiting lists by September 2024. Liz Truss, meanwhile, is promising a red tape bonfire of all EU laws retained after Brexit if she becomes PM. The Tory leadership hopeful says she'll implement a review by the end of next year and scrap rules which hinder UK growth. Critics warn it could weaken workers' rights, but Ms Truss says it would encourage investment. Staying with the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss has condemned Russia's attack on Ukraine's Black Sea port of Odessa and says not a word President Vladimir Putin says can be trusted. It came just hours after Moscow and Kyiv signed deals to allow grain exports to resume from the southern city. The country currently has around 20 million tonnes of grain in silos, causing fears of a global food shortage. Ms Truss says a solution must be found that doesn't involve Russia and their broken promises. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Many thanks, Ray. Our trusted noise of newsmaker will be back at exactly 10 o'clock. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In my big opinion, the NHS now costs every household in the country £10,000 a year. The health service is on life support, people are not being treated, and radical change is the only answer. In the big question, is political correctness or so-called woke culture destroying Britain? If so, can it be defeated? And my Mark Meets guest is the highly talented X Factor singer who was discovered by none other than Sir Elton John. Pop sensation Talia Storm joins me in the studio and tells her story after 10. Plus, it's claimed that Camilla joked about Harry and Meghan's child having a ginger afro. A harmless joke or deeply offensive? We'll get reaction from the Queen of US Royal reporting live from Hollywood, California, Kinsey Schofield. And in the news agenda with my panel, is graffiti art or a public nuisance? Reacting to those stories and many more are my panel of broadcaster and TV personality Lois Perry, presenter and columnist Andre Walker, and comedy star Mary Burke. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the programme, mark at gbnews.uk, and this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So there you go, folks. A very busy 2 hours to come. Big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. Let's start with this one. Here's a figure that will put your blood pressure right up. The Telegraph newspaper reports that the cost of the NHS to every household in the country is £10,000 per year. 10 grand a year per family, let that sink in. I say this with no pleasure, but access to the best private medical insurance would cost you a fraction of that. The government could pay people a grant of half of that figure, say £5,000, and they would easily find excellent health provision from the likes of Bupa. It doesn't have to be this way, and it shouldn't be this way. But that's the grim reality of the broken health and business model that is the National Health Service. Thousands of people are now using savings or borrowing money that the NHS for services that the NHS say is not urgent, which means that they've paid twice through taxes and again through savings or loans. The NHS risks becoming, like the BBC, a service that everyone has to pay for, but one which millions don't use. And of course, that doesn't end well. Daring to question the sacred cow that is the NHS is politically impossible. And here's the thing. You'll get dagger stares in polite company if you ever criticise this organisation, even though you are the customer and you're paying for it. You're allowed to be critical if it's not delivering, and it's not. Let me stress, the doctors, the nurses, the cleaners, the porters, the security staff, they are the best of this country. Talented, hardworking, educated, often underpaid, and of course caring. There are no words, but they exist within a structure that is crumbling. By next year, all income tax revenue will go to the NHS. All income tax revenue. Another stat that should have you reaching for your tranquilizers. At what point do we wake up from the anaesthetic and realise that money is in fact not the answer? Because no matter how much we put in, and Britain is now among the biggest spenders on healthcare in the world, things actually get worse. A new report from the think tank Civitas says that health outcomes in the UK are the bottom of the league among comparable Western countries, with 50,000 people dying every year for want of an effective medical intervention. So what's gone wrong? The painful truth is that as a nation, and I love my country and I love my people, we are not in good health. We eat a load of crap. Some of us drink too much. I've done all of that myself. And we don't take enough exercise. Obesity, type 2 diabetes and heart disease are all lifestyle related. All of them. No one's getting fat or diabetic on a diet of chicken breast, broccoli, salad or boiled eggs. But rather than tackle the root causes of illness, the NHS expensively manage the side effects with endless medications, so many of which don't even make a difference. Leading cardiologist Aseem Malhotra says statins for heart disease, for example, are largely a waste of time, but they cost the NHS millions. And new research this week suggests that antidepressant pills have no discernible effect on mental health. That's billions we spent treating people with medication that have apparently made little or no difference. The drugs don't work. And what about those middle managers on six-figure salaries, the endless bureaucracy, and what about an NHS clearly in the pocket of the pharmaceutical industry? Whenever you go to see your doctor, they never ask how much you're sleeping, what you eat, whether you've had access to sunshine or fresh air, if you drink enough fluids, or whether you move your body. Only the likes of NHS GP Dr. David Unwin, who has reversed the diabetes of scores of his patients and got their weight down, has made a difference. How did he do it? By getting them off bread, sugar, pasta, pizza, potatoes, biscuits, chocolate and beer. In other words, carbohydrates. I know, all the fun stuff. But I cut that stuff out myself and lost 3 stone. Mrs. Dolan says I'm too thin now. All most doctors can think of is what to prescribe next. The NHS is the biggest drug dealer in the world, and it's killing us. The cost of managing lifestyle-related illnesses is growing, with at least 10% of its budget handling type 2 diabetes, an illness that doesn't need to exist. It didn't exist on anything like this scale 50 years ago. It was rare and is now the norm. Even kids are getting type 2 diabetes now. And that's only half the story, because so-called metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, heart disease and high blood pressure are a gateway to other illnesses. Depression, cancer, fatty liver, kidney problems, fatigue, wear and tear on joints, inflammation, and perhaps most worryingly, dementia. Why is this a worry? Because people with dementia require accommodation and around-the-clock care. The young generation that we have now are the least healthy in history, with 30-year-olds getting new knees because they're so fat. Do the math. Right now, about 1 million people in the UK have dementia. What will we do when that figure doubles, triples or quadruples? Which at this rate it will. It's a ticking time bomb, and eventually the system will fall over. The public health crisis in this country, which is avoidable, not only threatens to bankrupt the NHS, it could potentially bankrupt the nation. And don't forget, a sick population cannot produce a happy society, cannot contribute to the economic growth that pays for all of our public services, and God forbid, if we were invaded by a foreign nation, would we be fit enough to fight? Good luck with that. The NHS is populated by the best people in our country, but it's a colossal money pit. A health service free at the point of need is a deal breaker for me. You don't want to have to show your credit card to paramedics when you've been run over by a car. But how we deliver free at the point of need healthcare is an urgent conversation we have to have. Many commentators will have you believe by questioning how the NHS works, you want to kill it. Not true. The NHS is killing itself. The final nail in the coffin was COVID, when the NHS forgot its core values. For 2.5 years, they shut up shop and ignored every other illness. They ignored first do no harm principles with vaccines for kids and young people that statistically don't need them. And then they sacked staff that didn't want a needle in their arm, even though they complain that they're low in staff numbers. And the NHS became the national COVID service, with GP surgeries literally chained shut and medics sat at home self-isolating because they'd been pinged having been near someone with COVID. Just think of the treatment they were not able to deliver for far worse diseases like cancer, whilst they were sat at home twiddling their thumbs, watching Netflix and grazing on banana bread. Doctors that didn't have COVID symptoms should have worked throughout the pandemic, and we wouldn't have the colossal waiting list, which some fear could reach 12 million. The health service, egged on by health unions, decided to pursue a zero COVID policy, trying to keep this extraordinarily transmissible virus out of hospitals. It failed, and the non-COVID lockdown death toll will likely dwarf that of COVID. And there's evidence that in the end, the NHS failed to preserve public health over the last 2 years. In fact, they did the opposite. So many people have died or will die or have diminished lives due to ignored other health ailments that could have been caught early but weren't. The NHS's obsession with COVID means a young mother at the age of, say, 30 now has to say goodbye to her children because she wasn't able to get that lump checked. The number of people that have written to me in the course of this pandemic, desperate for medical treatment, well, they've always received the same message from the NHS. If it's not COVID, they don't care. The NHS has the best in this country, but as an organisation, it's on life support. It's at death's door. The fat lady isn't just singing, she's in a cab on her way home. The NHS is in the territory of receiving its last rites and a blessing from the priest. The only way it can be saved is by having an honest national conversation about its future. Given that it's so politically untouchable, I'm not sure that will ever happen. It's enough to make you sick. Reacting to that and all of the big stories of the day are my all-star panel, broadcaster and TV personality Lois Perry, comedy star Mary Burke, and presenter and columnist Andre Walker. Andre, good to see you. Welcome back to the programme. What's your view about the fact that the NHS now costs every household in the country £10,000 a year?
Was that a joke about me being slightly late? Anyway...
Better late than never.
Nobody would have noticed if you hadn't mentioned it. Look, I think that the NHS has behaved really despicably in some respects during the coronavirus lockdown. When we are sat there bashing pans and applauding the NHS, we should be applauding some people in the NHS, but not everyone. I give the example of my mother and father's local GP in his mid-40s. Basically, the minute the coronavirus hit, he gave up and started seeing people only by Zoom, and he only came back to do the winter flu injections, which, of course, he gets a bonus for doing personally. I think there are some people who are absolutely taking the mick within the NHS, and I have to say to you, you know, I've got a friend of mine who's the managing director of a really, really significant cancer ward or cancer service for a major London hospital. And she says that nobody's willing now to take this treatment because they've been so warned off going into NHS hospitals. You are quite right. The end result of that is that people are going to die. We've got to be willing to touch this third rail of politics, which is mentioning the NHS. There are people getting away with all sorts of things. Let me give you a quick example. I know we're short of time, but the reality is the reason that junior doctors are so overworked in hospitals is because the British Medical Association will not allow nurses to carry out certain treatments because that will be damaging to their closed shop. And so you have nurses who no longer just clean stuff up, but have degrees themselves, not allowed to do any treatment. So what they do is they know what the patient wants, but they have to wait for a junior doctor who whizzes round all day administering those treatments. That is ridiculous. It means the junior doctor's overworked, it means he's not doing real medicine, and it's wasting the time of the nurses. And the totality of that cost is billions.
We'll always make time for you, Andre Walker. Lois Perry, what are your thoughts about 10 grand a year? I mean, I've mentioned in my big opinion monologue that you could probably give every household a budget of £5,000 and they could get great private healthcare. Now, I'm not saying that's how it should be, but I feel that's the direction of travel.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you could get family Bupa for, as you say, a fraction of that cost. I mean, I think that the time, if we're going to make any changes to the NHS, is now, because as you correctly said, the public has fallen out of love with the NHS. I don't think we'd have the same religious fervour now with the banging of the pans and the clapping. People have been spectacularly let down during COVID for anything that's non-COVID. And even if you had COVID, they told you not to leave the house and not to go to the hospital. So if you're not allowed to go to the hospital with COVID and they won't see you unless you've got COVID, you know, what exactly were they doing? Well, they were doing quite a few dance routines. We saw that on Twitter and social media. I mean, I'm making light of it. Of course, there's some fantastic people in the NHS, but now's the time, I think, while the public is a bit disillusioned, well, more than a bit disillusioned, I know that I certainly am, to make some proper changes and maybe look at the Israel model where they have 4 competing companies that, well, they're not companies, they're organisations that actually provide healthcare that are all state-owned and all compete with each other. And the better they do, the more money they get. And apparently the healthcare system in Israel is fantastic, free at the point of use and highly effective. Now is the time. The public is not in love with the NHS. I think that we should be brave now. I really, really do. Make some proper changes.
What do you think about this, Mary Burke? Many people will say that we've got a world-class health service and that actually miracles were worked in the course of this pandemic, particularly in relation to balancing the challenges of COVID with other treatments.
I think the NHS is on its knees. I mean, if you try and get an ambulance, good luck getting an ambulance. You'll be waiting for hours, be dead by the time it arrives. It's on its knees. I think it's going to have to revert to an insurance model, I think.
Yeah, I mean, how does it work in Ireland? I know you're a Brit now, you live in the UK, but the Irish system is private, isn't it?
It's a mixture of public and private, but mostly private.
Yeah, I mean, the issue we've got, haven't we, with an incoming new Prime Minister, Mary, is about what we do with the NHS. So what, in your view, should we keep and what should go?
The critical care is amazing and the rest of it you can get rid of.
Yeah. Oh, I like her.
Is that what it's like in Ireland?
The ICUs are amazing. John Radcliffe, shout out to John Radcliffe. The rest of it, gone.
The reality is, Mark, that we built a system under Labour after the Second World War, and it's not a political point, where they believed that public health would get better. Therefore, you could create a basket case system and the need for it to exist would start to disappear.
Yeah, they genuinely did, didn't they? They genuinely thought people would get better and better.
The problem you've got is it's based on a system of GPs being vastly overpaid for the job that they do and controlling the system in a way that's totally unacceptable. We listen to these people bleating on, the BMA going, we can't have the private sector in healthcare. Every single GP surgery is a private healthcare company. They simply do not accept that when you talk about it, but it's true. And the idea that you have somebody who trains for 12 years to be a doctor, and then rather than doing actual medicine in actual hospitals, they are dispensing penicillin to children for $150,000 a year. It's utterly, utterly ludicrous. The most shameful example of how trade unions can destroy a system.
I think the rot set in as well when Labour allowed people to actually opt out of doing nighttime visits, nighttime care. The GPs were able to farm it out. And unfortunately, because and I'm not having to go at women, but because there was a disproportionate amount of women working as GPs who probably had families, I can completely understand it. A lot of them opted out, and the whole thing collapsed after that. The whole concept of the family GP, the one that you went and saw that knew your mum, knew your nan, all of that, annihilated in one fell swoop.
Don't get sick on a Saturday.
Yes,
not.
yeah, that's what they say. I mean, Mary Burke, finally on this one.
And don't get sick during the summer when the junior doctors come into the hospitals.
Definitely not. Not when they've come off the back of a 20-hour shift. Mary Burke, let me ask you finally. I would say this conversation is, you know, a minority view within the country. Most of the public love the NHS, and they would say, leave it alone, don't privatise it, just give it more money.
But you can't leave something alone that's dying. I mean, it can't continue the way it is. It's not
What makes you say it's dying?
Have you been? What contact have you had with the NHS?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly if you go to A&E, you're looking at 6-7 hours now.
Yeah, like I say, waiting for an ambulance takes hours. Trying to organise physio appointments takes hours.
Yeah, and a new knee is considered non-urgent. Sometimes you've got to wait 2 or 3 years.
But you just said that was because everyone was fat. I'm not being funny.
By the way, speaking of which, look at you. You've lost a load of weight. How did you do it, Andre?
Do you know something?
Is it a keto?
Somebody, you told me about this keto thing. Somebody said to me, forget all these fad diets, just don't eat rice or chips or bread, which is in fact keto. I have to say to you, we do eat far too much carbohydrates. There's no doubt about it.
Keto is the way to go. Keto is life-changing.
There you go. Of course, that involves cutting out carbohydrates. Don't take my word for it. The amazing NHS GP, David Unwin, has worked miracles for his patients, reversed their type 2 and got them slimmed down. He's written for the Daily Mail and lots of other publications, and he's been on this show. However, if you're thinking about your weight or a diet, do consult your GP at all times. Lots more to come from my fantastic panel. But next, in the big question, is being woke just being a nice person? We'll discuss that with free speech champion, the one and only Toby Young, plus the author of a book on wokism and a very good friend of the show as well, regular panellist Peter Edwards. Plus your emails, and don't forget the pop star Talia Storm live in the studio, discovered by Elton John. She tells her story later. See you in 2.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Big response to my big opinion monologue, Mark at gbnews.uk. Thank you so much for the emails. Gary says, Mark, the NHS was broken years ago. The pandemic just highlighted it. John says, Mark, my family has had great service over the last 2 years. My wife had her sight saved and my son's life was saved just before last Christmas. He developed throat cancer. I don't believe all is well and there is a lot of waste, but the service we have received is first class. John, I'm so pleased to hear that both your wife and your son have recovered. And well done to the doctors who achieved that and the nurses and the staff at the hospitals you visited. Roger says, Mark, I love the show. Thank you, Roger. Very kind. This show's nothing without you. Roger says the worse the service, the more people are pushed to private health. And guess what? It's the same doctors, but earning a shed load more money. They are in a win-win situation. Julia says, yes, we turned into the COVID service during the pandemic, but we were told to do what we did by Matt Hancock. When we questioned anything, he told us to be more respectful. I would imagine there Julia works for the NHS because she talked about we in relation to the service. And last but not least, Mark, I'm a nurse and I hate it when people say the NHS should be privatised. The government have wrecked it over the last 12 years. It's what they want. We privatised the social care system in the 90s and look at the state of that now. Please, no privatisation, says Julia. Julia, thank you for that. I'm not sure about privatisation, but I think change is essential. But what do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. Keep those emails coming in. It's time now for the big question. At this time every night, we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, the battle against extreme political correctness, or woke culture as it's known. And it's entered the political arena with Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch saying that she would end censorship and cancel culture and scrap hate crime laws, which she said are just there to protect hurt feelings. What a shame she didn't get further in the contest. However, this week, Labour MP Chris Bryant defended woke values, saying it just means you're nice. Take a look at this.
To Tory MPs and people on the right who argue about all this kind of woke stuff, I just want to go, I'm sorry, you should never judge somebody according to the colour of their skin, what accent they speak with, whether they're male or female, what school they went to, what qualifications they've got, or their sexuality. The law should treat everybody equally, and everybody should have an equal chance in life. That's woke. That's me. It's decent British values.
Is that what woke is? I begged to differ whilst sitting in for the great Mark Stein on Thursday night in a video that went viral. Take a look. Wokeism trades on being nice, but it's not nice at all. It's vicious, unforgiving, and highly destructive. It works against Western values of economic and political liberalism. It works against democracy and free speech. Being woke doesn't make you a nice person, it makes you quite the opposite. It's fascism draped in a cloak of empathy. It's cruelty dressed up as kindness. It's hypocrisy in heels. Even old Donald Trump has got a view on woke culture. Take a look at this.
You know what woke means? It means you're a loser. Everything woke. Everything woke. It's true. Everything woke turns to shit, okay? It's true. It's true. Look at what's happening.
Bit of a mic drop moment that, Donald. You are so naughty. So can woke culture be defeated? Should it be defeated? Or is being woke just evidence that you're a nice person? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. We've also got the author of a best-selling new book all about wokism. It's called How Woke Won by Joanna Williams, which is winning rave reviews. And Toby Young, the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union. Can I start with you, Joanna Williams? Is it possible to define what wokeism is?
Well, it's very difficult to define, and I think that's probably quite a deliberate ploy. As you saw Chris Bryant in his clip there saying it just means being nice. I think that's very, very disingenuous. He went on to specify what that meant, and I'd really challenge him on some of the points he's making there. So he says, it's about not judging people by their skin colour, not judging people whether they're male or female, and treating people equally before the law. Well, if that was the case, I would be woke. Sign me up. I'd be all for those things. But the fact is, that is not what being woke means at all. When you look at, say, critical race theory, which is a really central plank of being woke, I would say that the most important thing about critical race theory is that it insists we judge people by the colour of their skin. It apportions privilege if you're white and disadvantage, victimhood if you're not white, if you're black. You're asked, you're told, being colourblind is being racist. Being woke is to obsess about gender. According to Stonewall, in a tweet they put out today, even 2-year-olds are supposed to have a sense of their gender identity, and nursery assistants should be working with 2-year-old children to consider the fact that they might be non-binary. So woke insists that we view people and judge people according to their gender. And inequality before the law inequality is actually enshrined within the law. The Equalities Act 2010 says that some groups, some identity groups, should have special privileges or should be treated differently in the law. So Chris Bryant, I think he's wrong. I think he's delusional, and I think he's being very disingenuous in the way that he describes being woke. If it meant being nice, I wouldn't have a problem with it if that was all it meant.
Joanna, is wokeism rooted in leftist ideology? Is it a left idea?
I think you can trace it to some aspects of the left, but I actually think it's moved far, far beyond that. I think it's a very elitist concept nowadays, which is very distanced from the left. One of the main reasons why I would say that is, for me, I would count myself as certainly in the past as being a very left-wing person. And I was, because I was very much about championing working class people. For me, class inequality was the biggest inequality that we had in society. And if you wanted a more equal society, working class people needed more opportunities, better rights, higher salaries, better living conditions. And it seems to me that a lot of the central tenets of wokedom are really against working class people. Very happy to write working class people off as gammon, backward, racist, just kind of not really fit for anything, and to actually privilege identity groups based on skin colour, gender identity, and actually forget class exists altogether. It's just a bit inconvenient for them.
Toby Young, thank you for interrupting your trip to Iceland. I don't know how woke Iceland is, but let's talk about the UK for now. Woke warriors have appropriated niceness and empathy, which is a pretty potent weapon, isn't it?
Yes, but I don't think they can maintain the illusion that they're very nice for very long. At the Free Speech Union, we get about 50 requests for help a week. And the vast majority of those people are being persecuted by people who think of themselves as nice and empathetic. So they've complained to their employers or to the institutions they're members of. They've started petitions, they've led pile-ons on Twitter. And when you meet these people, Mark, you realize just how traumatic being targeted by an outrage mob, by a mob of wokesters on social media can be. They're often completely shattered. Their world has collapsed in on them. And the more vulnerable, the weaker they seem, the more they try and apologize and make things right, the more sadistic and spiteful their persecutors become. It very quickly becomes apparent that this has nothing to do with being nice. On the contrary, it has much in common, I think, with movements led by puritanical cults down the ages. Whether they're persecuting witches in 17th century Massachusetts, trying to root out communists in 1950s America, whether it's the Cultural Revolution in China in the late 60s. This is humanity at its worst, trying to root out people who are ideological nonconformists and trying to push them away as sort of toxic things that need to be expelled from society, who need to be destroyed for the purity of the kind of moral elect. It's humanity at its worst. It's the opposite of nice.
Peter Edwards, at the heart of wokeism is cancel culture and great authors like Shakespeare and Orwell being labelled problematic, or people like Winston Churchill, the man who saved the free world and defeated history's worst monster, Adolf Hitler, as a bad man. Surely those examples mean that wokeism is nonsense and must be defeated.
Well, there's no one definition of wokeism, and I think that's at the heart of the debate tonight. And I must say some of the other contributions have been fantastically overblown. Massachusetts in the 17th century involved people losing their lives, and we're not at that stage, thank goodness. To go to what Chris Bryant was saying, I think as a gay man and a former vicar, he was making the point about fairness and equality and how that's a battle that goes on for generations. And obviously there's still people that resist some of the progressive legislation where we've had to support gay and lesbian people in the last 10 years. But in terms of wokeism, ultimately, there's no one definition. Look at the coalition. David Cameron introduced gay marriage, and then his Chancellor, George Osborne, gave a notorious speech about people in receipt of Social Security, describing them as people that keep the curtains closed and the very opposite of strivers. So was a coalition government woke or not? I think there's a hugely excited debate around this, but most people would struggle to define it. And I must say, 20 years involvement in the Labour Party, woke is, the question about are you woke has never, ever come up on the doorstep.
I mean, this is the issue, isn't it, Joanna Williams? Not just the challenge of defining wokeism, but also the denials that exist, which I suspect is another weapon in their arsenal. This is gaslighting, isn't it? Telling people that there is no cancel culture and that wokeism is a figment of their imagination.
Well, I think that's right. And I think also there's this tendency to try and present everything as just being on the same kind of progressive, it's just a kind of continuation of the civil rights era, a push for anti-racism, gay liberation, women's rights, all things which I think progressive people would get behind and would think were really positive. But I think the fact is that many of the changes that we've had in society more recently are actually not in line with those progressive movements. And not only are they not in line with them, but they actually seek to overturn them. So just on Peter's point there about Chris Bryant being a gay man and wanting to kind of celebrate further progress in this area, actually seems to me that one of the biggest threats to gay rights nowadays comes actually from groups like Stonewall, who seek to redefine homosexuality in relation to gender identity rather than in relation to sex. So the very fact of being same-sex attracted is something that they actually have a problem with, because as soon as you start saying it's about being same-gender attracted and that anyone can is free to define their gender how they choose, then you actually erode the entire concept of being same-sex attracted. So it really works to undermine much of the progress and tolerance that's been made in society towards gay liberation and gay rights.
I mean, I can help you, Peter, with various definitions of wokeism, but a lot of it's very shallow. It's virtue signalling. It's putting a flag on your Twitter bio. Normally, it involves being pro-EU with an EU flag, a blue heart, and essentially, you know, enjoying this moniker of hashtag be kind. But I found that online, some of those people are the worst bullies on social media. And I think that wokeism, Peter, should be a concern for the left as well. You're the former editor of Labour List. There are many figures on the left who feel that the left have abandoned them because of their embracing of woke culture. So the US comedian Bill Maher, a famous lefty, now hates the left. He hates the Democratic Party because they stand for wokeism, in which kids are coming home from school, like primary school, saying, "Mummy, am I a racist?" And that can be like a 5-6-year-old child. That's what wokeism is. People don't want it. What about George Galloway, who was on this programme a few weeks ago? George Galloway, who told me, he said, you know, I'm a socialist, but I'm not woke and I'm not a lefty. And he made a big distinction there.
Well, I'm not sure George Galloway is a socialist, and I'm not sure Bill Maher's view matters terribly. We're on GB News talking about how Britain...
Well, he's a voice of the left who is fed up with wokeism and has abandoned the Democratic Party as a result. In fact, Elon Musk tweeted as much as well. What about J.K. Rowling, a famous progressive lefty voice, a very successful author who's had a bucket of the brown stuff poured over her by woke leftists because she simply points out that there is a biological man and a biological woman?
Well, in the time remaining, let's talk about Joanne Rowling. And I would say, by the way, woke is not left and left is not woke, because the debate we've had tonight shows. But I think where we'd all agree is, apart from my advice to stay off Twitter, because I do, because there's an awful lot of nastiness on Twitter. But in terms of Joanne Rowling, you know, to me, as someone that's stood for elected office, it's not whether I agree or disagree with Joanne Rowling. It's that her views were lawful and she expressed them in a civil way. So she's entitled to those. And the kind of purpose of British democracy, you have a fierce debate. And Mark, you know, I would probably disagree with 95% of views I've ever heard from you, but we can debate it.
That's a ridiculous figure. That's a stupid thing to say.
Trying to cancel Joanne Rowling.
95% is a stupid figure, Peter. That's an idiotic thing to say. There isn't anybody in the country that I disagree with about 95% of what they got to say. Where'd you get that number from?
Well, it's
95%. Are you that intolerant? Are you that closed-minded?
To express her view.
Peter, are you that trapped in an echo chamber where you disagree with 95% of everything I've said? 95%.
Don't get hung up on a number.
I think that's woke. I think that's woke, because I think you said a very virtue-signalling thing there. You come up with a figure to make you look like such a nice person because you basically disagree with everything I said. I don't disagree with 95% of what you've said. And I think that's the problem, Joanna Williams. It's intolerant.
Well, it is, but I mean, I know
Peter... disagree with someone, is it? It's just a view.
95%. Bollocks.
I mean, certainly Peter and I have got on very well, and I know Peter, I don't think Peter is an intolerant person at all, but I agree generally with cancel culture. You know, it is fundamentally intolerant, and you look at the abuse that someone like J.K. Rowling has, death threats, you know, enough to paper the walls of her house, she said. There's no excuse for that. And the problem is it's not just intolerant, but it actually goes over into being authoritarian as well when it starts dictating how people can control, how people should be able to live their lives. You know, that's and I think what worries me is when we talk about cancel culture, we often hear about celebrities, people with a big public profile. I mean, I'm sure as Toby will attest, what the problem, one of the big problems with that is the message it sends out to ordinary people who don't have that public profile. The message to them is keep quiet, don't speak out, keep your opinions to yourself, because if you say what you really think, you might lose your job, you might lose your livelihood. You know, if you're a student at a university, you might risk abuse, unfortunately, not even just from fellow students, but potentially even from your lecturers as well. So the best thing to do is just to keep quiet and sit on your views. And when you have that in society, you know, you actually stop being able to function properly. You stop being able to have civilized conversations. You stop the free exchange of ideas. You stop free discussion. And you actually don't need laws to be able to do that. It's the culture, it's society, it's people imposing those views on others. And it's intolerant. It's also authoritarian.
Toby Young, we've obviously got this new book out by Joanna Williams. It's called How Woke Won. Do you think wokeism has won?
I think it's winning in some areas, Mark. So it's certainly winning on university campuses. It's winning in schools. It's winning in museums and galleries and arts organizations. It's winning across the public sector. It's winning in some large private sector companies. But I think you're beginning to see a backlash in the entertainment industry and in Silicon Valley. So Netflix, I thought, was quite robust in standing up to the workers who walked out in protest at Dave Chappelle's comedy special. And because it did deal with them quite robustly, there wasn't a squeak of protest from any Netflix employees about the Ricky Gervais comedy special. So I think you are seeing a bit of a pushback and a bit of a reversal in Hollywood, and maybe that will trickle down to the rest of the culture. But just to come back on something Peter said, he said that the issue of woke had never come up on the doorstep. I actually canvassed for a friend of mine that was standing for the Conservative Party in Newcastle North in 2019. And no one used the word woke on the doorstep. But a lot of traditional Labour voters said that they weren't going to vote Labour that time because they felt that the Labour Party had turned on working class people, and in particular, it was no longer patriotic. They thought that British culture, British history was something to be ashamed of, that British culture was riddled from top to bottom with racism, that often in armed conflicts Britain had been involved with, Jeremy Corbyn and his faction had always sided with our enemies. And that kind of anti-patriotic feeling emanating from the Labour Party, I think they might not have put the word woke on it, but that's what they meant. They didn't like the idea, particularly as many of them had been in the armed forces, knew people in the armed forces. They didn't like the idea that people in the Labour Party, the current people running the Labour Party, were ashamed of their country and didn't think it was something worth defending. It was just something we should be constantly apologising for. That to me, that's woke, and that's one of the reasons the Labour Party did so poorly. And I think Keir Starmer's gone some way to de-wokify the party, but not nearly far enough. I don't think Peter is part of the woke strand within the Labour Party. I mean, the fact that he's willing to come on this programme and discuss this issue with us suggests to me that he's not woke. One of the hallmarks of the woke is an unwillingness to debate. They just want you to acquiesce to their point of view, and if you don't, they try and cancel you. So I think Peter's clearly non-woke, but there is a real problem in the Labour Party. It's partly responsible for the Labour Party's failure, and it's not just the Labour Party. One of the reasons left-wing parties have been faring poorly across the democratic world is because they've been captured by a minority of woke activists who have no interest in representing the working class, who have nothing but contempt for traditional, particularly white working class people. And they sense that, which is why they gravitate towards right-wing populist candidates like Donald Trump. And if left-wing parties like the Democratic Party and the Labour Party are going to recover and start winning elections again, they need to de-wokify themselves. And I think Peter's in denial about that.
OK, Peter, final word. The clock's against us. You've got the floor.
His kind comments about me. I'm not sure the Labour Party is woke. I'd say Keir Starmer, he's made huge progress. He's clearly patriotic, ran a national institution. It's no coincidence he's been photographed with the Union Jack repeatedly since becoming leader. And I think that's because Jeremy Corbyn was seen as unpatriotic. And that's, to my mind, why Jeremy Corbyn was not a credible candidate to be Prime Minister. But perhaps, the point about debates is ultimately that we disagree fiercely on some of the politics, and I'm aligned with a particular party, but we do accept certain universal standards like free speech, courtesy, respect, and the right to disagree without it becoming personal. And of course, I'm happy to debate and defend the Labour Party view. And I think actually the Labour Party's policies are always geared towards helping people on lowest pay in poorest communities, often, but not exclusively outside London. But a threshold of any debate, TV or old-fashioned on the stump in a village hall when I stood as a candidate, was a debate with courtesy and respect, born out of a shared love for the UK, which I certainly have, and I'd say Keir Starmer has as well.
Brilliant stuff. Look, Peter, you claim that you disagree with 95% of what I think. In that, you've got it in common with Mrs. Dolan, and she's probably right on that. We always love having you on the show, and that was a great debate and a great example of free speech. My thanks to former editor of Labour List, regular panellist on the show, Peter Edwards. Also, Joanna Williams, author of How Woke Won, and Toby Young, the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union. Thanks, one and all. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. Next up, is Camilla racist? See you in 2.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's time now for us to speak with the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, great to have you on the programme. Camilla Parker Bowles in hot water, at least with an allegation made against her in Tom Bower's brilliant new book about Meghan Markle, which is called Revenge. Tell me more about this alleged remarks she made about Harry and Meghan's baby.
Right. In Tom Bower's new book, Revenge, which is out now in the UK, I'm anxiously awaiting my copy to get to my front door. It hasn't gotten here yet. He does say that it could have been Camilla that drove Prince Harry and Meghan Markle into Megxit and into the arms of the American people over a comment that was meant to be a joke, just pondering the idea of the baby having a bright red, I believe the term she used was allegedly ginger afro. Harry initially laughed at the time that the comment was made. This was before Meghan was pregnant, according to Tom Bower. And when Harry got home and repeated the joke to Meghan, Meghan was apparently, allegedly irate over it and did not see the humor in it, did not feel like it was a joke that was made, out of silliness or kindness. She took offense to it. Now, I have to tell you, over in America, Page Six, which is the #1 gossip blog, the #1 gossip outlet, it's been around forever, they say that Camilla's people, sources, anonymous sources, have reached out to them to let them know that Camilla is not the royal racist, and she did not make the she's not who Harry and Meghan were talking about during the Oprah interview. They did not necessarily deny that comment, but they say that she is not racist and she is not the person Harry and Meghan were talking about during the Oprah interview, which just leads me to repeat, I've said this to you 1,000 times, how unfair that this witch hunt has been going on ever since that interview. I wish they would have just come out and said who said exactly what, so that we wouldn't be having this conversation every 6 months.
Absolutely. I know you're not the biggest supporter of Camilla because you're such a Diana fan, and Diana suffered very much because there were 3 people in her relationship with Charles, herself, Charles and Camilla. So I think you see her as something of a homewrecker and find it hard to forgive. But do you think that if this allegation is true, that it makes Camilla a racist person?
I don't think Camilla's a racist person. And while I do love Diana, I think that Camilla has really earned her place within the royal family and behaved. Actually, now she's surprisingly one of the least problematic members of the British royal family. It really is surprising if you think back.
Now, either Kinsey's had too much Botox or we've got a bit of an internet connection issue. But let's bring my panel in on this one. We're just going to load up our images of the lovely... who have we got? We've got Andre Walker and Lois Perry and Mary Burke, the comedian. It's obviously a light-hearted remark. We don't have a response from Camilla. It's alleged at the moment. It may be that she'll deny that she said those particular comments. But, I mean, what do you think, Mark at gbnews.uk? Is it actually racist? Let's talk to our panel about this now. Mary, what do you think? You're a stand-up comedian. Does that sound like an innocent joke? Will the baby have a ginger afro?
But it's a legitimate question. You would wonder if it would have a ginger afro. It seems a legitimate question to me.
Yeah. What do you think, Lois? I mean, could this be damaging for Camilla, even if she does deny it? You know, no smoke without fire and all that.
But the thing is, it's only a bad thing to say if you think having an afro is a bad thing. So it's only the racism comes from actually the people that are accusing her of the racism. If the baby has a ginger afro, that's great. So what? It's funny, it's fine, it's cool. No, it doesn't damage Camilla whatsoever. It actually shows that she's got a sense of humour and she's real and she's normal. So no, it's not damaging for her at all. And the real racists are the people that are making the comment saying that it's racist. And Meghan Markle would take offence at anything. It's well known that I despise the woman. I think she's a narcissist and a sociopath, and she would take offence at absolutely anything. And as my granddad said on the day when Harry got married to Meghan, poor Harry. Poor Harry.
But Harry found it funny until he came home and said it to Meghan Markle.
Until she told him
and then he realised it was racist.
She explained why he should be offended.
It's like the Will Smith slap, isn't it? Yeah. Because Chris Rock made a joke about Will Smith's wife. Will Smith laughed. Then he looked at the wife. He got the dagger stares, and it was all game over. We've got my amazing panel. They're back in the next hour. And in my Take at 10, in just 2 minutes' time, why John Cleese is going to be the saviour of free speech. Plus, pop star Talia Storm, discovered by Elton John. See you shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. We don't do boring, not on my watch, as you may just have discovered. Welcome to the programme if you're just joining us. My Mark Meets guest is the singing star discovered by Elton John. She's dated Brooklyn Beckham and she's been mentored by Simon Cowell. Talia Storm tells her amazing story shortly. In the news agenda with my panel, is graffiti art or a public nuisance? Should men be having kids earlier? And is the era of pen and paper over? Do you still use a pen and paper? I'd be lost without mine. Plus, tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30. And after this, my take at 10, why political correctness is killing comedy. I'll see you after the headlines with our very own Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Rishi Sunak is promising to put an annual cap on the number of refugees accepted by the UK. The former Chancellor, who's competing against Liz Truss to become the next PM, says he'll also tighten the definition of who qualifies for asylum. Describing the current system as chaotic, he says he'll also give the government greater powers to detain, tag and monitor illegal migrants. Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary has told the Mail on Sunday she would extend the Rwanda scheme and increase border force staffing. Liz Truss is promising a red tape bonfire of all EU laws retained after Brexit if she becomes the next Prime Minister. The Tory leadership hopeful says she'll implement a review by the end of next year and scrap rules which hinder UK growth. Critics warn it could weaken workers' rights, but Ms Truss says it would encourage investment. The latest polling shows that voters believe Rishi Sunak would make a better Prime Minister than Liz Truss. An opinion survey of 2,000 adults found that 43% back the former Chancellor, compared to 36% for the Foreign Secretary. Meanwhile, 49% of voters believe Boris Johnson should leave Downing Street immediately. France's Foreign Minister says facilities need to be improved at the port of Dover to help ease travel delays. It comes after drivers faced waits today of up to 11 hours. Catherine Colonna made the claim after speaking to Foreign Secretary Liz Truss. However, she's blaming a lack of French border officials. It's the second day of delays as British tourists try to set off on their summer holidays. And the Prime Minister has visited Ukrainian troops being trained by British Armed Forces in North Yorkshire. Boris Johnson was shown how to use weaponry and grenades during the session. He says the UK is committed to training around 10,000 troops over the next 4 months to help repel Russian aggression. To date, Britain has pledged £2.3 billion of military support for Ukraine. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Many thanks, Ray. Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Big stories, big guests, big opinions, and always a few laughs along the way. In the news agenda with my panel, is graffiti art or vandalism? Should men be having kids earlier? And is the era of pen and paper over? Do you still use your pen and paper? I'd be lost without mine. Plus, we've got another topical game show and tomorrow's papers hot off the press at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. And my Mark Meets guest is the singing star discovered by none other than Sir Elton John. She's dated Brooklyn Beckham, haven't we all? She's been mentored by Simon Cowell, and she has topped the charts. Talia Storm shares her incredible story right after my take at 10. Comedy legend John Cleese has said that extreme political correctness is having a disastrous effect on comedy. In an interview on US TV, he said a lot of comedians are now sitting there, and when they think of something, they say, "Can I get away with it? I don't think so. So-and-so got in trouble for a similar remark." And that, says Cleese, is the death of creativity. He's so right on the week that Dave Chappelle, the legendary US comic, saw his theatre show cancelled for gags about trans issues. And there's been more confected rage around the brilliant Jimmy Carr this week for, again, simply doing his job and telling jokes. Edgy ones, yes, but that's what he does so well. So Cleese is a hero all over again with this intervention. This is a man who gave the world Monty Python, Fawlty Towers and A Fish Called Wanda, to name but a few. And thank God this 82-year-old comic genius is using his power and his platform to call out what could be the death of his art form. And why is that important? Well, because comedy is what makes life worth living. It's what makes life bearable, by not taking things too seriously. Looking at the funny side of even our worst problems is a particularly British trait. It's why it's the best place in the world to live. No matter what us Brits are going through, we always try to have a laugh about it. I'm always reminded of the incredible emotional roller coaster that was Only Fools and Horses, one of my favourite shows. At one point, you're in tears because of a fight between Del Boy and Rodney. Seconds later, you're in hysterics as they've made a joke about it. The gags during the funeral in relation to Uncle Albert's funeral, one of the funniest episodes they ever made. Why was it funny? Because in comedy, nothing should be off limits, even a funeral. But now comedians attack each other for not being woke enough. And I've got to say, so many stand-up routines now just sound like a political lecture rather than comedy. That's fine, I'm all for free speech. But go woke, no joke. Tedious, politically correct comedy is a big turn-off for audiences. Viewing figures for shows like Live at the Apollo, which was once brilliant, are now in the toilet. Toilet humour, if you like. Comedy should have no boundaries, no safety net, no insurance policy, and no one's feelings should be spared. Within the law, you can say what the hell you like. Comedy is a bellwether for free speech. If comedians can't speak truth to power and make jokes about anything they like, we have no free speech, and therefore no freedom of thought, no way to release the pressure valve of our own problems, and no way to help us navigate towards being a better, happier, and more understanding society. Comedy is a central plank of an enlightened, accountable, democratic, evolving, and free society. Comedy is so good for us, so important, so fun, but we're killing it, and that is no laughing matter. Reacting to that and all of the big stories of the day are broadcaster and TV personality Lois Perry, comedian Mary Burke, and presenter and columnist Andre Walker. Mary, you've been cancelled yourself as a comedian, haven't you?
I have been cancelled, yeah, from a gig in Brighton.
What happened?
The audience weren't happy with material that I'd done before, and they didn't want me on the show, and I was cancelled.
And it was perfectly reasonable material. I think, were you joking about gender issues?
I was joking about gender issues, yeah.
Yeah, and they were gags. It wasn't a sort of nasty political diatribe or anything.
See, I think the problem is there are groups of people who have no idea what a joke is. They don't think of a joke as a joke. They just think of it as bits of unpleasant information. So if you don't know what a joke is, then of course you're going to be constantly offended.
Well, that's right. We've heard that.
Stop pandering to these Puritans because it's destroying comedy.
Well, yes, Mary, we heard that in relation to Jimmy Carr. And people framed the debate around the Holocaust gag. I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't love the joke, but I'm pro-free speech, and he was joking. But the press reported it of Jimmy Carr's comments about the Holocaust, his remarks, his opinions. It's like, no, they're not comments, they're not remarks, they're not opinions, they're jokes. Mary.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Remember them? So do you, where do you see this going? How's it going to play out, Mary Burke, in terms of comedians doing gags they want to do? Is there going to be a backlash? What do you think?
I've had two friends of mine. The police have actually come round to see two friends of mine because punters have made complaints about their jokes. The police have actually come round to their house. They haven't arrested them, obviously, but they had to give a statement. My house was broken into 6 months ago. Do you know how many police came round to my house? None.
Zero.
But they can dash round if they get a plane from a punter. It's like I say, stop pandering to the Puritans. It's a joke, it's a joke, it's a joke. That's it.
Mary Burke, I agree with 95% of everything you say. Andre, about 3%. Let's talk about this because, as I've mentioned there in my take at 10, comedy is a bellwether for free speech.
Comedy is sacred. Comedy is what makes life worth living.
Yeah.
I'm doing a show at the moment about my husband's stroke. And the only thing that got us through that whole period of time was the fact that we could both laugh about it. And I think you can make jokes about absolutely anything as long as you're lived in experience.
I have to disagree. Look, it's kebabs that make the life worth living. Kebabs and beer, it's not comedy. I mean, look, comedy is great, I really enjoy it, but the kebab and the beer is just, it's what makes life worth living.
Yeah, but the thing is, Andre, comedy is like sex. You know, nothing should be off limits. But you don't
comedy with you is not like sex.
No, but you don't necessarily want people sitting around watching you laughing while you're doing it. That's the main difference. But the thing is, humour is absolutely a barometer for free speech. And what you're talking about, you know, just there is an actual thought crime. The police came round to talk to you and your colleagues because of thought crimes, and that's Orwellian and that is dangerous. And wokes don't have any humour whatsoever, do they, Andre?
I'm quite surprised that there are comedy shows in Brighton anymore, because everyone I've ever met that moved to Brighton is one of the most sad, pathetic, woke individuals. I mean, I think there are a small number of people in Brighton who are just being slowly but surely pushed out. I mean, honestly, I've never heard anything funny from any of the recent arrivals in Brighton. For those of you that have been there for a while, I genuinely pity you. Move to Windsor, it's way better.
Well, yes, and again, just briefly, Mary, people might think that we're over-egging this idea that comedians are being censored. But
Police coming around to someone's house is not a joke.
Well, exactly.
The police should not be called to your home to interview you about anything.
We know about
Joe. The police actually chose to spend their time driving around to someone's house to take a statement from a comic is ludicrous.
But Mary, this is evidence that all comedians should now have a bedpan. Just empty it out the door.
Probably a great idea.
Tudor style, just out of the window. A Blackadder does that.
I'm awfully sorry, officer. Well, that's my cesspool you've just walked past.
By the way, we were talking about comedy being like sex. Well, my comedy is like sex. They always fall asleep. Thank you, guys.
Hey.
We will return to my fantastic panel.
One's the best.
In just a few minutes' time. But what do you think? Is comedy getting boring? Mark at gbnews.uk. Well, we put out a Twitter poll, and the question was, is political correctness killing comedy? And here's the response. 96% said yes, 4% said no. It's all about opinions, of course, and we'll get to more of those shortly, but it's time now for Mark Meets. Indeed, it's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, singing sensation Talia Storm, who took the world by storm with her appearance in The X Factor. She won the hearts of Simon Cowell, Nicole Scherzinger and the millions watching at home. Since then, this huge talent, rare in the world of music for writing her own material, has become a fixture on the music scene. And she's made as many headlines for her private life, dating the likes of Brooklyn Beckham, as well as appearing on reality TV shows, including E4's All-Star Driving School and Celebs Go Dating. I can't think of which of those two are the scarier to be on, probably the driving one. It all started with a chance encounter with rock legend Elton John, and the rest was history. Talia Storm, welcome to GB News.
Mark Dolan, thanks for having me.
Thrilled to have you. So tell us the Elton story.
Well, I mean, still to this date was actually the 10-year anniversary from when I opened his concert, 13-year-old Talia, literally just last month, 23 now. I passed my demo tape, pure chance encounter, to David Furnish, who's Elton's partner, and 24 hours later, Elton phoned my mobile, said he loved my voice, listened to all my songs, said I had an incredible soul signature, and asked me to open his concert in Scotland, my hometown, 6 months later. And literally just like that, my life changed overnight.
So the phone rings. I mean, does it say Elton on the phone? I mean, you probably didn't have the number saved.
Well, I'll never forget it. It was like a Sony Ericsson flip phone, and when I tell you this phone had not rung the entire holiday, like it was like I swear I got this phone from Tesco. I'm 13, like no 13-year-old has a cool phone.
Probably didn't have much credit on it.
No, there probably wasn't. And we were actually going through security because we were flying home that day, and I started crying because I had to explain, like, oh, I can't speak right now, and I was like totally panicking and like very nervous. And then that was it. The call ended. I got through security, and I'm like in tears trying to explain to my mum Elton was on the phone. Everyone was like slightly chaotic. Had 2 younger brothers, and then like 10 minutes later the phone rang again because obviously there's no caller ID. I can't call back.
Wait a minute. You want to get into the world of music? You've hung up on Elton John.
I have hung up.
Right. So he calls you. Did he introduce himself?
Yeah, he was like, hi, is this Talia?
You didn't think it was some crank call or something? No.
Well, I mean, in hindsight, if anybody phoned me now and said they were Elton, I might question that.
You knew that the CD had gone to David, so I guess it wouldn't be...
Yeah, I'd written a letter with the CD, and I said, I would just love you to listen to my songs. And I gave him my phone number, and this was the number. So not for a minute did I think that Sir Elton John would phone my mobile. And the fact that we were going through the airport, like if he'd literally phoned 10 minutes later, we would have already been like walking to the gate. Like it was just very dramatic that in this moment, I'm 13, my mum's got like, I think my little brother was like 4 at the time. And so like my mum and dad are all over the shop, and I'm there like, Elton's on the line.
Yeah, so the gig's arranged, and you get to this venue, obviously sold out, I would have thought.
Sold out.
Thousands of people. Mm-hmm. And what was the the set list, I mean, how many songs did you
So I sang
perform?
5 songs.
That's a lot of songs.
It wasn't. If I actually think back, I'm like, wow, I was really on it back then. So I sang 5 songs. I opened with Summertime, Ella Fitzgerald. My background is jazz ever since I was like very, very young. And then I did 4 of my own, including a song called California and He Loves Me, which were on the demo that I gave to Elton.
And the fact that you write your own material will have been very attractive to Elton.
I think that was one of the things that he loved the most. You know, I think in a sea of, you know, everybody nowadays can be an artist at the touch of a fingertip, which I think is incredible. So I think, you know, even back then, to stand out, I feel like you've really got to have your hands on every plate. So that's something that I've always stuck by. I'm still writing, you know, everything inspires me. And I think if you've got a wild imagination like mine, then just keep dreaming.
And the fact that you write your own material caught Simon Cowell's eye as well, didn't it?
Yeah, well,
that was something that he was really impressed by.
Well, that story was not particularly true because it was X Factor, the band. It wasn't X Factor.
Which is a reality show around the X Factor.
Correct. So it was actually a spin-off because they cancelled the X Factor and they did the Celebrity X Factor. And this is actually quite a traumatising story for me because look at the clip of me. It's traumatising.
I think you look fabulous.
Yeah, and so Simon was a big fan of me and wanted me to come on the show, but to be a solo singer. And then after it, I had in the pipeline to work with them all because he has Psycho. But obviously I go on the show and I was only set to be in it for 2 episodes, not meant to be in a band. But the way that, I mean, I've done TV before, I'd done Celebs Go Dating, I'd done a TED Talk, I've had books out. Let's just say they didn't play it in my favour. But it's fine, you know, like, I feel like I've got really thick skin, I'm from Glasgow, I don't expect anything less than, like, the bare minimum. And I think probably would have been more traumatising if I hadn't had my experience, you know, like, for example, they filmed my VTs for like an hour and a half and then the only clip they showed was me making a joke being like, oh, ha, 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 it's my dream to be a backing singer. And they filmed everyone else for 15 minutes. So there was definitely a narrative that they wanted to play because I'd done so much. But I'm like 20 years old on there, like, you know, and or even 19 even. So music is always the #1 thing for me. So any chance I get the opportunity to sing, no matter what the show is, no matter what anyone's opinion on the show is, this is my dream. This is what gets me out in the bed in the morning. So of course I'm going to say yes, you know. And I think I never say no to stuff because I'm like, you define your own journey, and I think the experience makes us who I am, and it makes my songwriting better, and it makes, you know, even like this, everything inspires me, you know.
Definitely, and you're fearless, I think.
Fearless, yeah, definitely. I think you've got to be. Otherwise, just go home. You know,
go hard or go home. Yeah. Where does that come from?
My mum, for sure. Both of my parents. You know.
And your mum, of course, is Tessa from Real Housewives of Jersey.
Exactly. But my mum's only just gone in front of the camera. She's been behind the camera for years. You know, she did Scottish Fashion Awards. Yeah. She got a CBE from like Prince William, I think, handed it over to her. So she's done a lot.
One of the good princes, yeah.
Yes, correct.
Dodged a bullet there.
And I think that's just made me who I am in terms of, we come from a very, very small village in Scotland, and my granddad is probably my biggest idol. He's shaped our entire family. He literally has a working class background, dropped out of school at 13, you know, was a plumber, lived in a tenement building, and then went on to build this very successful business from nothing. And I think my mum and dad have always been like, if you want something, if you can dream it, if you can close your eyes and it's there, then go out and get it.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. You've been in the studio.
Yes.
So some fantastic new work coming out. Is it out yet?
Well, this has been a really good year for me in terms of, like, I feel like I've been setting loads of little stones up, and finally, like, the jigsaw's coming together. So at the start of the year, I was in Abbey Road with Nile Rodgers. Incredible. Which is incredible. I was just out in LA, and I finally got to get in with one of my most favourite all-time producers. But I think the thing is, my biggest message is, you know, we need to stop comparing ourselves to this, like, overnight success. So right now, hot topic, Love Island. It's my favourite show. I love it. But I think the problem with this is all my 20-year-old friends who've just come out of uni that I went to school with, they're comparing themselves to this, like, overnight sensation. But it's like, I want to be the example of, like, look, it's going to take you 20 years. It's going to take you 15 years. It's going to take you 10. I'm on 10 years now. I've not made it by no means, and I'm still at the very start of my journey, and I know I've got a long way to go. But I think we need to take this almost like this idealised fairy tale of, like, you're going to be an overnight success. You can get 100, you know, 1,000.
And you won't have to work hard for it.
And it's not about working hard, because I know that these reality stars work very hard. It's not about that. It's about the length of time it takes to get that result. Right. Yeah. So I'm here to say, like, look, Molly May and all the new Islanders, incredible. They smashed it out of the park going on that show and nailing it. But you can smash it out of the park on a 10-year ladder. Don't, just because it's taken you 10 years to get there and not 1 or 6 weeks in an island. I'm not undermining their hard work, because they work hard the same way that you're going to work hard. But don't compare. And I think that's probably the biggest message that I always say to, like, even when I was back in Glasgow, seeing all my school friends, I'm like, that's my #1 message. Don't compare.
So can we look forward to a new album?
Yeah, definitely. That's I'm really, really excited about it.
And is it going to a mixture of collaborations? So Nile Rodgers and the producer in LA?
Yeah, producer in LA is probably going to be he's my main man for it. I've got a new song coming out called Fake Friend, which will be dropping next. And yeah, I did 2 collabs with a rapper called SL here in London, who is he's probably my favourite. He's done a song called Tropical Juice, which is that kind of shaped my, like, growing up. And it was like a #1 in, like, 2017, and he's still smashing it to this day. So I think, I feel like I've just really found my feet. And I've got that mojo back, and that, I just love creating and entertaining.
Any element to which you lost your normal teenage years because of all of this? Any regrets that you weren't just sort of hanging out with your mates, drinking cider in the park?
Well, not at all. I think the only time that I've ever stopped was that X Factor moment, because it was the first time in my life I looked at myself in the mirror and went, I just got played. And I've never had that feeling before. I've always just been like, go, go, go. And if you keep going, you never lose. And that was just a moment that I was like, this is what they talk about. This is what they sell you. And then there's a completely different agenda at the goal. But I was a baby, so it doesn't matter. But do I look back and miss getting drunk at the park? No, but I actually only started drinking in lockdown.
Is that right? Yeah.
I've not stopped since.
A lot of us befriended the bottle during lockdown.
But I don't know. I just feel like that's what keeps me young. The fact I'm new to it. You know what I mean? I'm like, everyone laughs at me because I'm the biggest lightweight going, and I'm like, well, that's because I didn't do it through the teenage years. Now I have got something to look forward to. Absolutely right. Yeah, you've not opened all your presents on Christmas morning. For me, the big story with you is your talent, your music, your songwriting, your ambition, your positive energy. I think there needs to be a self-help book at some point, by the way. So inspiring. Feel energised listening to you. There's obviously a little bit of kind of gossip, showbiz tittle-tattle. You dated Brooklyn Beckham, lovely guy. Now he's married. Does that marriage have your blessing, or is he the one that got away? We're not gonna use the Beckhams for clickbait here. We've got more to talk about. No comments. We've got more to talk about. No comments. And also, in hindsight, I was 15. If I think about that now, my brother is 17 and he's a child. He's a baby. So no comment. Well said. And is it hard to find love when you're famous? This is so funny that you've said this, because I've just written an entire, 6-page PDF that I just sent to my producer because he asked who I am and this whole spiel. And I sent it to him, and I was writing all about the fact that I think nowadays, because we are like these alpha women, I think we scare a lot of the guys away that are meant for us because of this facade and this front that we put on. Because we are going out there, we are paying our own rent, we are getting the show on the road. And I think that scares away the guys that are actually right for us and attracting the wrong type of man. What is the wrong type? You know what, I always say, anyone that's really available to everyone is not available to me. I'm a Scorpio. I love a mystery. I love a game. Quite passionate, the Scorpios as well, aren't they? Yeah, I love a puzzle. I love wanting to crack you open. See, if you're cracked open for everyone, I don't want that. I want it to be my prize, because I've discovered this. Your discovery, yeah. And anyone at the moment, or? Yeah, definitely. Oh, bravo. And it's not no one famous. But we don't discuss. We don't discuss. Okay, well, the plot thickens. And TikTok's been massive for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. You've embraced that platform. It really helps get your music out there. Well, TikTok, I feel like, has actually changed my life, because if I think about where I was come kind of, let's say, X Factor era, I'm 19, there was no opportunity to get your music heard in terms of you would get playlists by Spotify, but they held all the control. Whereas now, if you've got, if you can entertain and if you can make people feel something, then you will be heard. And I think now it's not about, edited Instagram photos and looking $100 million. It's about having a personality. And I love TikTok because I can just be myself. Do you feel under pressure? You're very beautiful and you look fabulous. Do you feel under pressure to look a certain way? I get asked ask this a lot. I think it's more about like what I make of it. I want to look good. I want to get up, dress up, and make sure that I almost deserve this opportunity to chase my dream, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I felt like after X Factor, and I've never even said X Factor so much my whole life, I don't even know why I'm talking about it this much, but I gained like 10 kilograms, and I just felt so lost because I was like, what, like if people that big with that much power are you know, just using me for clickbait, you know, using me for their views because I'd already done so much and I had a big following, just to almost paint me as a diva when that's exactly not who I was, and I went out my way to just be me on that show. I just felt so lost, but like then I felt like I just needed to go back to the music. I needed to go sit in front of the piano, and if anything, lockdown really saved me in terms of just getting at one with the art, and I think it all comes back to that. So nowadays, I'm like, yeah, of course I walk 20,000 steps a day. That's my job. You know, it's my job to look good. I will make sure that I'm working hard in every aspect of my life.
There you go. Where do you get your energy from? It's amazing. Can't wait for the new album.
Thank you.
So, taliastorm.com?
Taliastorm.com.
There you go. It's all there. She's on TikTok, she's on Twitter, she's everywhere, and she's been on GB News. What an impressive person she is. A great music star, a huge talent, brilliant stuff. Next up, the papers with full panel reactions. See you shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Lots of emails coming in across a range of topics. We were talking about whether wokeness just means you're a nice person. This from Lee, who says in the 1930s, some, if not all people in several countries were silenced by a minority. In this country now, others are suffering the same tactics. Strong words there. Lee, not happy. Declan says, what a fantastic guest Talia Storm was. Very, very impressive young woman. And a few other tweets about that. And also comedy. This from Mick. Mark. The remedy for a long life is laughing at jokes and funny sketches. I'm just recovering at home after a hernia operation. And today I nearly bust my stitches after watching sketches from the Benny Hill show. Mike, enjoy Benny Hill, a true legend of comedy. Thanks for your emails. Keep them coming, Mark at gbnews.uk. It's time now for this. That's right, it's exactly 10:30, so it's time for tomorrow's papers hot off the press. And let's have a look at the first front page of the Daily Star, and they are leading with the following. Britain is hottest since the Stone Age. Yabba dabba few, say the Daily Star Sunday. We're not sure how they know, but very clever boffins say this summer will be the hottest for 125,000 years, when elephants roamed Britain and the Flintstones lived in bedrock. That was very much a golden era for the world, wasn't it? Next up, the Sunday Express. Boris Johnson on his legacy. PM, we did take back control. Boris Johnson has declared victory in his mission to take back control of Britain's laws and borders in a personal message to Sunday Express readers, delivered 3 years to the day since he became Prime Minister. 3 years of sticking up for you, says Bojo. The Observer next, travel chaos, the new normal after Brexit. British tourists are warned. And Thatcher ministers turn on trusts over tax cut plans. Tory grandees who served in Margaret Thatcher's final cabinet have warned that the former Prime Minister would never have approved of Liz Truss's plan to slash £30 billion off taxes funded by borrowing. It's been described as immoral by Rishi Sunak. But Chris Patten, Norman Lamont and Malcolm Rifkin have all condemned these tax-cutting plans. We'll come to that shortly. The Independent, the carbon cost of Europe's wildfires, blazes such as this photograph of a firefighter in front of a burning wood on the island of Lesvos in Greece. And it's blamed on pumping out huge amounts of CO2. Anger at Sunak's hardline plans for immigration. Rishi Sunak has sparked outrage as he set out a hardline plan for immigration if he becomes PM. The package features limiting aid for poor countries if they refuse to take back failed asylum seekers. Sunday Telegraph next. Sunak, I would cap number of refugees. That story appearing on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Former Chancellor woos Conservative right as opponents claim he tried to block pro-Brexit policies. Public may have to cut energy to avoid winter blackouts. And also on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, HS2, a killer whale that may maim the new PM. Sunday Mirror next, cost of living exclusive. NHS staff sell days off to pay bills. Skint NHS workers are selling their days off to make ends meet. They take extra payments instead of taking time off. And finally, in the Sunday Times, it's no longer feasible to be a full-time GP. Doctors' leader warns of working hours crisis. That was the topic of my big opinion monologue, which you can catch up with on our Twitter feed at GBNews. Sunak's migrant vow as wife pays homage to Margaret Thatcher. Photograph there of Rishi Sunak's wife taking a picture of a statue of the Iron Lady. Also, Lords put spanner in Boris Johnson's plan to create dozens of peers. And French insistence on passport stamps is causing holiday chaos. Quelle surprise! And those are your front pages. Let's get full panel reaction now from political commentator Andre Walker, presenter and TV personality Lois Perry, and star comedian Mary Burke. So let's get through all of these. Lois, can we talk about the weather? Britain, the hottest since the Stone Age. The Daily Star Sunday, the only paper not to link it to climate change. Quite refreshing.
It is refreshing, and it's also refreshing there's a slight narrative change, isn't there? Because it's always been, it's the hottest it's ever been. Now we're talking about different periods of history. So they're talking about the Stone Age period. I've talked a lot, and there's been a lot of talk recently. There's been scientists that have come on GBNews that don't agree with the climate change narrative about medieval warming periods, Roman warming periods, and the Stone Age warming period, apparently. I haven't been told about this by the scientists and the physicists that work with me, but, yeah, interesting, very interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? Meanwhile, Andre Walker, the Prime Minister, doing an interview with the Sunday Express, we did take back control. Do you think that Boris's legacy is secure? I know his departure was ignominious, but will history judge him kindly?
Well, I would certainly hope so, because he is somebody who was taken down for the same reason that Margaret Thatcher was taken down for being insufficiently pro-European. The reality is that she won big majorities, he won a big majority, and a group of, frankly, cowardly people have allied with Keir Starmer, who I always say that the way that he negotiated behind the back of the British government with Michel Barnier in order to secure an inferior Brexit deal ought to be a criminal offence. It's not.
Treason.
It's a criminal.
Treason, yeah.
Well, it's a criminal offence in the United States of America. It's not a criminal offence in the UK. But certainly, to look at Conservative MPs, to watch Liberal Democrats, to watch people who claim to be patriots of Scotland in the SNP, try to put this man, who really I think should be in prison, into number 10, I think is dreadful. So as far as I'm concerned, the Boris gaffes are not that significant, not significant enough. But lest we forget, Mark, every single thing, whether it be the cost of living crisis, whether it being fined for having a party, any of the things that you can talk about with Boris, knowing about Chris Pincher, all true of Rishi Sunak. Let's throw a giant hypocrite into number 10 and watch him be defeated by a pro-European turncoat, Keir Starmer. That's what they want.
Mary Burke, do you think that Boris Johnson will be a thorn in the side of our next Prime Minister?
I hope so. I sincerely hope so. And gets his revenge for being backstabbed out of there.
Yeah, I mean,
this is the issue. Prime Minister, though, isn't it?
Well,
Liz Truss was extremely loyal and didn't stab him in the back at all, did she?
I'm looking forward to Liz. Well, Liz Truss will be a fun Prime Minister, though, just from the sheer entertainment value of a woman who couldn't find her way out of a room with one door.
Really harsh words. Why do you lack trust in Liz Truss? What's the problem there?
When she starts a sentence, I always get the feeling she doesn't know where the sentence is going to end. Like she's actually improvising as she goes. She doesn't give me... And her public speaking is appalling.
Yeah, but surely that's good for a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, but she's not a comic, though.
No, that's a reasonable point.
The press are also
if she's
reporting...
doing a tight 10 or something like that, that'd be brilliant, but not as Prime Minister.
Mary, the press are reporting also in the Sunday papers that Rishi Sunak, in the most recent poll, would be considered the most suitable or the best Prime Minister in relation to him versus Liz Truss. So do you think this is, is there now some momentum building around Sunak?
I think there probably is. But I mean, it's like being the tallest midget, isn't it? It's not a great choice.
You think it's a low bar?
It's a very low bar.
But don't forget as well, that's with all voters. So that's not just voters that would be likely to vote Conservative. So that means that he appeals very much. It's Labour voters, and a lot of people would say that's because he has extremely left-wing policies, like tax and spend chancellor, and, he is actually pretty Labour, pretty woke. I mean, he's totally pro the net zero stuff. He doesn't, he is not going to reverse any of that, which means
But is anyone? I mean, is Liz Truss going to?
I think that Liz Truss, well, she's already said that that we're going to be doing fracking, or she's going to be looking very closely at doing fracking again. She's not into all the green stuff at all. We'll put it this way, she might have to do it a little bit, but Rishi really believes it and really loves it, and his 9-year-old is directing his policy.
I'm still heartbroken. Kemi got knocked
totally
out.
agree with that.
I thought she would have been...
I think that
can you imagine her running against Labour? Unbeatable.
Yeah, why would you have seen Kemi as being so potent a weapon?
Just a voice of change, a young black woman. And she's so impressive as a public speaker.
Un-PC.
Completely.
Pro-free speech. I mean, we can but dream, perhaps next time round. Although, Andre, Rishi Sunak showing the Tory right a bit of leg. Here we are in the Sunday Express.
Come on.
Rishi Sunak, my very short legs, my 10-point plan to curb immigration.
Oh, let me tell you something. You're perfectly welcome to be a massive tax avoider yourself. You can have your £1 billion fund in the Cayman Islands. Your wife can be a non-dom. You can have a green card for the United States of America. But when you stand up then and say it is immoral to cut taxes for everybody else, I believe that you can no longer be a Conservative Member of Parliament or indeed a Conservative Prime Minister. And as far as Rishi showing leg, get out of it. I'm not responding to that.
Now, Andre,
extremely short, isn't it? So it wouldn't be very much.
We're not talking about Rishi's legs. I don't care.
You know something?
I'll leave. I'll just get the taxi early. I'm not joking.
Short politicians, it doesn't matter being short. It's the same as movie stars.
How tall is he, just out of curiosity?
Well, he's sort of a little bit taller than Tom Cruise.
What, 5'7"?
Come on, that's only about 3 foot.
He towers over Kylie Minogue, but
yeah, but the thing is that some men aren't very tall, and it doesn't matter because they've got huge personalities.
Beg your pardon?
But Rishi just does look small.
She was not going to say that.
I was.
Now let me jump in and defend old Sunak purely for balance, if no other reason. Plus, I've said he should be our next Prime Minister, but
he's watching an awful lot of the West Wing, you can tell.
You also voted Remain, right? So
yeah, I've been wrong in the past. the issue is, well, first of all, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Rishi Sunak, and Lord Frost ganged up on the Prime Minister in December of last year. to talk the PM out of cancelling Christmas. And we know that Sunak's been something of a lockdown sceptic. But here's the other thing that will please the Tory party faithful. He's playing the Thatcherite card, Lois. Now, the line of attack is that he's a high-tax chancellor, that's not Conservative. Well, there you have it in one of the papers today. Let's just dig it out. I think it's not the Telegraph. It is the...
Sunday Times.
It's the Observer.
Oh,
Thatcher,
the Observer!
Thatcher,
They're pro-Rashid. Shouldn't that show you everything that you need to know about
potentially, but Thatcher ministers turn on Truss over tax cut plans.
Story?
Well, of course
because they don't want Liz Truss in. And they're the Observer, so doesn't that answer the question?
But Norman Lamont, for example, a very right-wing man.
Norman Lamont.
Okay.
But were they...
Former Chancellor.
Norman Lamont looks like a slug.
But let's not make it personal.
What to do with the price of fish?
I don't know.
Play the man, not the ball. But just 2 weeks ago, Dominic Lawson, Nigel Lawson's son, wrote in the Mail that his father would be very supportive of Rishi Sunak's plans not to cut taxes yet because of inflation and because of borrowing. That is the Thatcherite policy.
But on a
not irresponsible tax cuts.
No, but on a serious note, and by the way, you won't believe this, I've been contacted by a chef from Brighton who would have liked to have seen Mary, but anyway, I got a message.
Who was denied the opportunity, sadly.
Oh, she'll sell out next time.
But anyway, on a serious note, look, I talked about how Margaret Thatcher disappeared. The reality is, Margaret Thatcher's disappearance was all about the exchange rate mechanism. It was all about shadowing the Deutschmark. It sounds like dry, boring economics, but all of the people you're referring to all loved it. Whether that be Lamont, whether that be Lawson, whether that be Rifkin, all of them.
Didn't they all betray her at the end anyway?
Of course they did.
So who cares what they're saying? And anyway, Rishi has been spending so much money. We've got hyperinflation. It isn't that he's just thinking of spending more money now. He's been doing it over the top for the last 2-3 years. It's why nobody can afford to do anything.
Do you remember when we all... And look, it may surprise you to learn that I like a pizza and a pint at Wetherspoons, but do you remember when Rishi Sunak got us 50% off that Eat Out to Help Out, to save the pubs, to save the restaurants, to save the cafes, and then the following week, they shut them anyway. He might as well have taken £2 billion and taken a blowtorch to it.
Lots more to come. Should men be having babies earlier? A story in the papers will cover that very, very shortly. Also, is graffiti art or a public nuisance? And is the era of pen and paper over? A cracking story in tomorrow's Observer. More from the papers and another game show after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Some emails coming in about poor old Rishi Sunak. This from Mara, who says, Mark, it's obvious Rishi Sunak is a sixth form student in 14 to 15-year-old school uniform.
Yes.
There's a burn. This week, an interesting story in the papers. Leicester has made its mark on the art scene. Europe's tallest street artwork at 82 metres has been completed in the city centre. But it begs the question, is graffiti art or is it a public nuisance? Mary?
It depends what it is. If it's tagging on trains, then it's a nuisance. That makes me so angry. If it's just your initials, that's not art.
Who cares? Because you're in the train, you don't see the graffiti, do you?
You do when the train pulls in.
And it's not great when it's on the windows, is it?
It's just grim.
Yeah. What about the side of buildings, the side of houses?
But they were being commissioned by the council, wouldn't they? They're all...
Yeah, but otherwise, just, imagine some youngsters...
If it's a picture of something, then it's art. If it's just your initials, then no, it's graffiti. There you go. That's...
I mean, should it be protected?
No.
No. So people could just paint over it, basically?
Yeah.
OK. What do you think? Graffiti? Because lots of my viewers don't like graffiti.
Well, look, there's no harm in drawing anything you want to. The question is...
It's not your property,
where you're going to do it. The problem that you have with graffiti, and if you go on the New York Underground, it's full of graffiti and whatever, it shows that there's no level of security there, and that makes people extremely nervous. If you go to Waterloo Station, underneath there's Leek Street, where people just do graffiti all the time. It's really worth seeing. But I think if you're allowing people to just do it willy-nilly, that's dangerous. I mean, look, if you look at Banksy, it's all great concepts, but the reality is now, when you stick something on a wall, people remove it. I was about to say people pull it off, but people remove it.
Jesus Christ, Andre.
Family show, Andre, behave yourself. I mean, this is the point. I wonder whether there should be dedicated areas for graffiti.
Well, it's interesting you say that because about 6 months ago, I saw some very interesting graffiti and it was ready for Rishi. But that was 6 months ago when he set up his backstabbing website in advance.
Can I tell you that Rishi Sunak is very good with a spray can? You're watching the papers on Mark Dolan tonight. Now let's head to the Observer. According to new research, the male biological clock impacts the chances of a successful pregnancy more than previously thought. A study of nearly 19,000 IVF cycles found that there was a significant drop in the live birth rate of women between the ages of 35 and 40 if the man was over 40. And we thought old men were super virile, but that may not be the case. So it begs the question, should men be having children earlier? What do we think?
Yes, they should. Your sperm is knackered.
Oh, well, I know mine is, yeah.
Well, that's a massive problem for me.
Ask Mrs. Dolan.
That's a bit of a problem for me because I only fancy old men. So, but then I've had 2 children, so I'm all right.
What is it about old men that does it for you?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Apart from the bank balance.
Well, there is that. No, it's the witty repartee. And, of course, I'm always young if they're that much older. I don't age. I'm like a permanent middle-aged Lolita. Yeah. So it works for me.
No, definitely. Well, I'm sure that you probably tower over some of them as well, I would have thought. You're very statuesque, lady, aren't you, in your heels?
I have to say to you, coming from Lee in Lancashire, I can tell you that we don't need fathers to get any younger. 15 is... 15 is appropriate.
Leave it there.
But you don't want to be the old dad at the parent-teacher, the little kind of school sports day. You want to be a young dad.
In Lee, 28-year-olds are going to see their grandchildren.
Welcome to Broken Britain. I mean, Mary, this story is about biology and the fact that a younger man is going to be probably more fertile than an older man. That's the headline. But it does raise the question about whether it's also better for kids to have a younger father, more energy, he can play football with them and be around when they're growing up. Rather
then
than
again, if you're an old dad, you'd be around a lot more, though, wouldn't you?
I think a little bit older is better.
Yeah, maybe a dad in the 40s.
But what about a dad that's too exhausted to play football?
But the thing is, right, isn't the number one skill of a father, and I'm not a father myself, so apologies.
Paying for
but it's knowing how to pretend how to be a horse on a Saturday night and ride round the lounge.
Well, I was brought up by my grandparents.
That's with the kids only.
Yeah, I was brought up by my grandparents, actually. So I have an interesting thing with that. My granddad was 50 when I was born, and I lost him quite recently. So, yeah, I mean, he was, in effect, my dad. So, I mean, he wasn't my dad, but he was, in effect, he was my father figure, and he's gone. And I feel it's too early.
Yeah.
So there is an interesting thing there about, the age.
The older father, that brings with it a sting in the tail, which you're statistically going to lose him sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. I was 37 when I lost my grandfather.
But I want to.
It's like if you have a dog and the dog is dead by the time you do your A-levels. Statistically, that's what's going to happen.
But
Well, then don't do your A-levels.
I genuinely want to know whether you are attracted to older men because you.
Oh no! Please don't analyse me, Christ alive!
That's what
yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's what everyone's
You just saved me 50 grand on therapy. Thanks so much, Andre.
No, but she wants a toy boy next, Andre. So watch this space.
Listen, I'm available. Believe
As
me.
many kebabs as you can possibly
Believe
stuff
me,
in your mouth.
As many kebabs as you want. 10 pints of lager. If you enjoy poor quality jokes, bad dress sense, and general rude and obnoxiousness, I'm your fella.
Actually, you're ticking a couple of boxes.
That's a lot
You
of
can
words.
take your Tinder dates to Weatherspoons.
Now you're
Curry
talking.
Thursdays.
You had me at Weatherspoons. Another great story in The Observer. Writing has dropped off a cliff. The Observer report that schools are now leading to handwriting specialists to tackle children's pen skills caused by the use of laptops and tablets during the pandemic, leading to a lack of extended writing. So, is the era of pen and paper over? Should we be encouraging kids to be able to write with a pencil and a pen?
I still have a fountain pen.
You have a fountain pen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have those, but they always leak in my pocket.
Yeah, they
Very
do.
messy. But so
My
do you
penmanship
use...
is amazing. I had a certificate for my penmanship. The nuns thought my penmanship was amazing.
Is that right? Yeah.
I've got a papyrus and I've got a feather. No, I'm joking. I'm writing block capitals, but thankfully it's not green ink.
Oh, I'm glad to
You
hear
always
it.
knew, when I went to the House of Commons, you always knew. When
The
a
green
lecturer
ink was
arrived,
out the nutters, wasn't it?
Green
Yeah,
ink,
yeah.
green ink block capitals. And, dear Walker, how dare you?
Does pen and paper, Lois, have a certain value that is superior to writing an email?
Absolutely.
great for love letters.
I've got a file of facts, and we were talking about it before, and you put your receipts in, business cards and everything. So, and you don't have to charge up a file of facts. You don't have to charge up a pen or a piece of paper.
You borrowed a charger off me in the green room for your phone.
Exactly. But it shows you how rubbish I am then, doesn't it? That's why pen and
Pure
paper so...
hypocrisy. On the TV, you're talking about a file of facts. You don't need to charge it. You borrowed a
because
charger.
I was waiting to say it. I was waiting for a message.
OK. I personally like
But think of a love letter. Love letters on paper.
It's not the
a
same
beautiful
on an
thing.
email.
It's not the same as a
Drunken
text.
text messages are better. I love you.
You really aren't selling yourself to me.
They can't be deleted. Brilliant stuff. Well, look, it's about that time. Let's do this. On that inflammatory note, it's time for another great British game show, and it's inspired by French President Macron, who is looking very French with this traditional hardware. So tonight, can you guess, if you're watching us, or indeed if my panel in the studio can ascertain the celebrity under the headwear in Mad Hatter? And let's start with our first celebrity. Who could this be?
Oh, everyone
Abraham
knows that.
Lincoln.
It is Abraham Lincoln
Yeah.
before his tragic assassination.
Yeah.
What a gentleman he was. OK, next up, we've got an international pop star.
Rihanna.
Yes, it's not the Pope, folks. There she is. Pop music icon, Rihanna.
No, she doesn't. I think that hat is heavy. I think that's the main
She's
problem.
struggling under the weight of those pearls. Next up, we have another showbiz superstar.
Oh, is that
Lady Gaga,
Let's have a look. Is it Gaga? Yep, another Gaga outfit. She looks like she's wearing this kind of thunder symbol from the weather forecast, isn't she?
Yeah, that's right.
She does.
How about our next male singing legend?
That's Boy George. Boy George. I love Boy George.
Recognised just from the jacket, couldn't you?
The only other one who wears that hat is Keith Lemon.
You know, Boy George is the male me.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I have a connection with Boy George.
There's a story.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out on the drink with him.
No, I have. I've a couple of times. Yeah. No, I
He's a
haven't been
really
out
good
with him, but I've
DJ.
met
He's
him.
a really good DJ.
He's lovely.
Lovely
I actually
guy.
went up to him and said that I had a doll of him and must have come across like a completely insane fan. And he was really sweet.
Yeah. He goes
go.
into that file of funny pop stars.
His autobiography is hilarious,
Alongside
actually. He's a good writer.
Liam Gallagher is funny.
Yeah.
John Lennon was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. A few
Yeah.
others. OK, well, let's power through our last few. Which celebrity is this?
No idea.
It's a model.
Oh, is that Paloma? No, it's not Paloma.
She's got a mono eyebrow. or very bushy eyebrows?
I don't know.
Cara Delevingne?
Yes, it's Cara Delevingne. Well done.
Whose father was the captain, or great-grandfather was captain of the Black and Tan.
You know your onions.
Really?
Okay, let's do a few more. We've got a lady famous for her bum, but what about the headgear? Who is that?
Kardashian then.
It is.
Has she covered herself up completely?
Yeah, at the Met.
Balenciaga.
She was going to Saudi Arabia.
It was her best look.
It was a Saudi Arabian tour.
Next up.
That's got to be Elton, is it?
It is Elton.
Or it's a Pixie.
Yes, it is Elton and a Pixie, all rolled into one. How about this French-Canadian warbler?
Oh, it's Celine Dion.
Yeah.
Yes, her heart will go on.
It will
She's
go
got 44
Wait a minute.
sisters,
Her hat will go on. You're welcome.
And
okay, let's try if we can. Two more.
Oh, that's mental, isn't it? Who's that?
Chandelier lady.
Don't know.
The connection is Russell Brand.
Oh, they go.
Oh, it's Katy Perry.
Katy Perry.
Yeah.
There she is, wearing a
She's
chandelier.
like a firework.
And last but not least.
Oh, it's
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle.
There you go, with the brown stuff poured on her head. Except this time she wore it. Okay, there you go. And I'm here all week. Folks, stick around. I'm doing headliners, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9. Thanks to my panel and you for your company.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK will be showery in the north and west, but dry and very warm towards the southeast. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be a wet morning across the far north of Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland we'll see a mix of sunny spells and a few showers as well. Northern Ireland will also see a mix of bright spells and showers during Sunday morning, with the main focus of those showers across the northwest. Northern England, though, should be largely dry, with some good spells of sunshine, although the odd light showers cannot be ruled out, especially over the high ground. North Wales also getting off to a dry start tomorrow morning, but southern and central Wales will see a spell of more persistent rain and stronger winds, giving a rather dull and damp morning there. The cloud and rain will also spread across parts of the Midlands. However, here the rain will be patchier, with eastern areas staying largely dry throughout the morning. It'll be breezy, especially in the west. Northern East Anglia may see the odd stray shower first thing. Otherwise, it'll be a dry and sunny morning. It will become very warm, despite the brisk breeze. The dry and sunny weather will also encompass much of southern England, although the southwest will be rather cloudy with some patchy rain. Breezy for many, with stronger winds across Devon and Cornwall. Little then changes as we move towards lunch across the UK, with temperatures in the southeast and East Anglia approaching 30 Celsius. And that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.